So they need to be good with that. They need to make sure they're comfortable with that amount. Our contract tells us that the initial earnest money is due within 5 days of the effective date of the contract. So we go under contract. Remember, in contract world, a day is a day is a day. And we always start counting the day after. So if today's Tuesday, that means Wednesday is 1, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's got to be in by Sunday, but you're going to find a bank open on Sunday. So technically, we need to get this in by Friday, right? We need to get this in before the bank. Well, I guess you could put it in Sunday, but it's not going to post, is what I should say. It's not going to post until Monday. It's due from the buyer to the escrow agent within 5 days. So let me rephrase that. It's not going to the bank. It's going to the closing attorney. Is the closing attorney going to be open on Sunday? No, which means we better get that thing in to them by Friday. Monday's too late. Monday's day 6. Once the escrow agent has it, now they have 3 banking days from receipt or contract formation, whichever one happens first. Let's run a couple scenarios with that. Let's say you are negotiating the contract. You guys go under contract. Congratulations, you have your effective date. We have 5 days of the effective date to deliver and 3 banking days of receipt. Here we go. 3 banking days of receipt to get in the bank. So once the escrow agent gets it, they have 3 banking days to get in. Again, it always starts the day after. So if today's Tuesday, they have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to get it in the bank. The second piece of this, or contract formation, you may have a scenario, you may have a case where a buyer says, why don't you hang on to this earnest money for me while we're negotiating the offer? Maybe this is an out-of-state buyer and they're going to hop back on the plane. While we're negotiating the buyer, hang on to this earnest money deposit for me. The buyer doesn't owe this money until and if it becomes a contract. If the offer never becomes a contract, then they never owe it. So because we don't have a contract yet, we're still negotiating the offer. Don't run and put it in the bank. However, your BIC, and I'll talk more about that in a second, your BIC will hang on to that earnest money deposit until and if a contract is formed. So once we have contract formation, then we have 3 banking days of contract formation to get it in the bank, either get it to the escrow agent or if the firm's going to deposit it. What if the contract is not formed? Well, full brokers can walk around with somebody else's money. Guess what, PBs? You cannot. PBs cannot hang on to somebody else's money. So if your buyer hands you their earnest money check and says, just hang on to this for me, you need to get it immediately to your BIC. Full brokers cannot walk around with somebody else's money, or PBs cannot walk around with somebody else's money. Full brokers should not. Bottom line, when you have somebody else's money in your possession, it is your responsibility. So get it to where it needs to go, even if it's to the BIC while we're negotiating. As we're negotiating, you have that earnest money deposit. What if the contract is not formed? Then we need to get that check back to the buyer per their instructions. Do they want you to write void on it and take a picture of it? Do you want a video of you put it in the shredder, right? Do they want it to stick it in the mail and send it back to them? Let them know this contract is informed. I'm not putting in the bank. How do you want your money? How do you want your deposit back? I don't think we're seeing that as much anymore. And some firms may even have a policy that says, we're not hanging on to earnest money. We're only going to get it at contract formation. So if you ever come to that scenario where your buyer wants you to hang on to that check for them, just call your BIC and see how they would like you to proceed. See how they would like you to handle that. If the seller breaches, we talked about how the buyer can go after the seller for the due diligence fee, the earnest money deposit, and the due diligence costs. So the buyer can go after the seller for those monies that they've paid. That is their compensatory damages. With compensatory damages, I always think of invoices and receipts. You have something to prove that you paid money in connection with this transaction. If the buyer doesn't want their money, then they could go after the seller for that specific performance, after the seller for the property. If the buyer terminates within the due diligence period, the seller will keep the due diligence fee. But because we're still in with due diligence, because we're still exercising that buyer's right to terminate, they'll get their earnest money back. If the buyer terminates after the due diligence period, now the buyer's in breach. They are past that right to contract or right to terminate period. And the sellers, their liquidated damages will keep the due diligence fee. And now they're going to get the earnest money deposit. And as we saw, as their sole and exclusive remedy. No more doom and gloom. What happens if this thing actually makes it to closing? The due diligence fee and the earnest money will be credited back to the buyer. They paid it once. As now that we're at closing, we can think of those, both of those, as a deposit or a down payment. It's money they've already paid towards the purchase price. That's that much less they have to bring to closing. Questions on what happens to the earnest money when during the contract process?
Can you repeat that? You said questions about where the
Anything with the earnest money that happens if the seller breaches within due diligence, after, or at closing. As we said, you guys can't walk around with somebody else's money. When you're handed an earnest money or due diligence check, you need to get it to where it needs to go. If they say, hang on to this until next weekend, take it to your BIC and let them hang on to it. As a full broker, we should not walk around with somebody else's money. Like I said, you guys, when you have somebody else's money in your possession, it is your responsibility. So make an effort, make a point to get it to where it needs to go so you can get that off your hands. You know, we all know with money, the less hands it touches, right? With us, we're only touching money for the purposes of delivering it. We're assisting in getting it from point A to point B. So make it happen. Ezra, did you have a question?
So we're gonna, if they pay the earnest money deposit cash, we'll deposit to the escrow account, or where we had to deposit.
So if the earnest money deposit is cash, if your firm allows it, and they hand you cash, whomever the escrow agent is going to go ahead and get it in the bank within 3 banking days, even if we haven't formed a contract, because cash is readily available funds. Cash is more risky laying around in somebody's desk than it is in the bank. So get it in the bank. If this contract is never formed, I could write a check back to the buyer tomorrow because we don't have to wait for that to clear. It's readily available funds. So the exception of these banking days is holding earnest money is if the earnest money deposit is cash. And guys, your firm may very well have a policy that says we're not going to accept cash earnest money, because that has somebody handing y'all $5,000, $10,000, something like that. How risky is that? So to protect everybody, we might just say, just go get me a money order or a cashier's check. Much less risky. If it goes missing, y'all, they're coming after you first. So make sure you handle that if your firm allows it. Before I ever touch it, I would make sure that my firm is okay with this. And if they say no, it's nothing to go get a cashier's check, money order, any something like that. Commission rule that addresses earnest money, specifically how we handle it, like I just said, we can accept it only for the purposes of paying delivery boy. We're going to get it from the buyer to where it needs to go. Is that to the listing agent for the due diligence, or is that the escrow agent for the earnest money? So be prepared to meet up with your buyers. You go under contract, yay, meet up with your buyers, get those checks, and get those checks delivered. There may be a scenario when we have met up with our buyers agents, we have met up with our buyers, and we are en route to deliver the check. And your buyer calls you and says, don't deliver that check. Do not drop that check off. Guys, I'm only playing delivery guy. So if they tell me not to deliver it, if they tell me not to deliver it to the seller or the escrow agent, then I'm going to honor their instructions. I'm going to do what they tell me what to do. It's not my money to make the decision about what to do. Now, obviously, the next breath, I'm going to say, really? Why? The seller could terminate, that whole written notice in which the buyer has one banking day and then the seller has the right to terminate. So it spells out what happens if we don't get it. We can remind our buyers of that. But bottom line, it is their money. And if they say, do not deliver that to the seller, I have to follow their instructions. So we need to get it back to them. Again, I would find out why. Something's up, right? Something's up. So I would find out why. Once it's out of your hands, it's out of your control. So another good reason to get it to where it needs to go. And then the last little thing on earnest money is disputed funds. I know we talked about this last week when we looked at our offer to purchase and contract. If we have to terminate, the contract says we terminate within due diligence, the buyer gets their earnest money back. We terminate after due diligence, the seller gets the earnest money. It's pretty clear what happens to the earnest money. Here's the kicker. When the parties sign the termination, they have to agree to release the earnest money. And if both parties don't agree to release it, then the earnest money is disputed funds. The escrow agent can't release it without the party's permission. Remember that escrow agent is an impartial third party. They can't make decisions about what happens to somebody else's money. So the parties have to agree to release it. The escrow agent can make a couple efforts. Maybe they send a certified letter, a couple phone calls, an email, trying to get the parties to come to terms. But after a certain amount of time, and I don't remember how much time, but after a certain amount of time, the escrow agent is going to turn it over to the clerk of courts, and let the two go downtown and hash it out. It is not in their control. It is not in their power. Even if the escrow agent is the closing attorney, they still can't legally address because it's not their money. That's the whole point of the trust account. It's an account where you're holding somebody else's money. You have no control over that money. Does that make sense? So even though you and I can interpret the contract, the attorney certainly can. If it's disputed funds, and honestly, guys, let's face it, nobody likes to terminate. That's never a good phone call. The party that's not signing to release the earnest money, I'm telling you right now, is the one that's not getting it. So if we're in due diligence, the seller may not want to sign it. If we're after due diligence, the buyer may not want to sign it. Give them a day or two to simmer down. Give them a day or two to, come back to reality. Review with them the contract provisions. Try to have these conversations. That paragraph that tells us they'd be on the hook for both parties' attorney's fees. That's important to remind them If they're still not willing to do it, then these are their consequences. But it's been my experience, if you let everybody sleep on it and give them a day to, grumble about it and move on, we're much more agreeable the next day. I get it. Nobody likes to terminate. Totally get it. But it happens. Questions on anything with earnest money? Okay. This last little section in chapter 11, a lot of this is going to serve as a really good review from what we talked about in chapter 10, which I like. So we can kind of refresh because we've learned a lot in this class. I get it. So we want the opportunity to refresh. By the way, we are on point to do a little review Thursday before our exam. So I think the review is worth paying attention to. And that'll help get the current information in us so we're ready for that exam Thursday evening. So that's what's on the agenda for Thursday. So this last section is our sales contract procedures. We're going to discuss more about submitting offers to sellers, kind of the rules there. We're going to talk in this section how to handle multiple offers. And then we're going to look at offer modifications and counter offers. So let's talk about submitting offers. And before we submit offers, we first have to have a refresher about contracts or form. So to have a valid contract of any time, there must be acceptance and there must be communication of acceptance. You hear my word must? We have to have the parties agree. We have to have the parties' signature. In pre-licensing, you might have been told that when you see the word acceptance, you know it's been signed. Well, now you're in the real world. And in the real world, when you told that it's been accepted, if the other agent calls you and says, my guys have accepted, your knee-jerk reaction is to ask, but has it been signed? Because I'm telling you right now, if you got verbal acceptance, you have absolutely nothing. So we need to verify if that acceptance comes over an email without the contract attached, if it comes over a phone call or a text message, you guys with me? If you don't see the signature, our knee-jerk reaction is to ask, has it been signed? Well, my guys are at work and they're going to get off at 5 and they have every intention of sitting down at 5:15 and signing it. Then guess what? You don't have a contract. If you got verbal, you have absolutely nothing. So we want to get these signed. Once we know that it's signed, we have that communication of acceptance. We've got to communicate to the other party that your offer has been accepted.
I have a question.
Yes.
So if it's not accepted until it's signed,
By
can they
both parties.
just say that we signed it? And then what if they really didn't? Like, how do you know if they signed?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, right? So presumably the agent that's calling, that's saying that we've accepted, the agent doing the communication of acceptance, hopefully they've seen it, right? Hopefully before you pick up the phone and call me and tell me they've accepted, you've logged into your DocuSign account and have seen the signed contract. If they refuse to do electronic means, then you were sitting in front of them, you watch them sign it, and now you have that signature. So hopefully the phone call, the agent that's communicating that acceptance should know that it's been signed. As far as the other agent, I pretty much just got to trust you until you can send me that signed offer. But that's like that good ethical stuff between agents, right? Don't call another agent told them it's been signed when it hasn't. Ezra?
So if we send the offer, so we're gonna tell the agent for email, example, And we're gonna tell them, oh, we have a client that interested, like we have an offer. So we send the offer, and how many days or hours we can send another email to the agent to see if they saw the offer, if they don't sign it, because immediately they sign it, it will appear in the program that we use. And we will
You
tell
submitted
us,
it.
so how many days or hours, if it's not signed or it's rejected, we can contact the agent for that.
So we can always call and say, hey, what's up? If your guys made a decision, your buyer may choose to put an expiration date on their offer. We're going to look at that form tomorrow night. Your buyer may say this offer is only good till 5 p.m. on Thursday. And if we don't have acceptance before then, this offer is dead on the table. The other point to remember, Ezra, what if you have a seller or seller's agents that's dragging their feet? Yeah, they're going to sign it. Sure. Yeah, they'll sign it tomorrow. And they keep dragging their feet and it keeps going on. Remember, the offeror is free to revoke their offer at any time prior to acceptance. So if your buyer's getting frustrated because the seller's not responding fast enough, we can revoke their offer. If you put an expiration date on it, now we have a definite time date. Does that make sense? So, yeah, the roles, let's talk about this. The offeror is the person making the offer. If you're a fan of play on words, there's the offeror or the giver of the offer or the creator of the offer. The other party in the transaction is the offeree. It's the person receiving the offer or the receivee of the offer. You guys are going to have a test question. And it's going to ask you, what's that magic moment in time in which this offer became a contract? And that test question is going to look about this long. That may be one that you want to bookmark and come back to when you know you have more time. Have you guys watched the Classmarker tutorial? If you're not familiar with Classmarker, if you watch the tutorial, it's in Lane's email with the messed up Zoom link. So if you haven't seen it, go back and watch that so you know what to expect in Classmarker on Thursday. Let's say, let me run a scenario. I would like you guys, when you see this test question, when you see this, I would like you to utilize your scratch paper and work this out, because you're going to have some counters. The roles are reversed. You're going to go back and forth. But bottom line, we need to know who the last offeree is that needs to accept it. And we need to know who the last offeror was that needs that communication of acceptance. So what I just drew, I refer to as the contract communication line. And let's say we have the buyer on one side with their agent. And typically speaking, the buyer starts as the offeror, the one giving the offer. Then on the other side, we have the seller with their agent. Again, typically speaking, the seller is the receivee of the offer. Let me pause here for a second. This isn't always the case. 99.8% of the time, the buyer is making the offer to the seller. But couldn't the seller make an offer to sell to the buyer? Sure. The majority of the time, the buyer's given the first offer, but don't get that stuck in your head. It's not always. It could be the seller's making an offer to the buyer. Seller's making an offer to the buyer. So an offer's made, you're with your buyer, you go out and walk in the front door of a property, and the buyer says, oh, this is it. This is my dream home. This is the one that I've been looking for. Let's write it up. You go home, you pull out your offer to purchase and contract, any applicable addenda, go to MLS and grab your RPOs and your MOG, all that paperwork we need to include. It's more than the 17-page offer to purchase and contract. Fill in the blanks on behalf of your buyer. Ask them questions like, how much due diligence do you want to offer? When do you want to close? Do you want to ask for seller pay closing costs, etc.? We're going to have, once we fill in the blanks and complete the offer, we're going to have our buyer sign the offer. The seller needs to see that signature to know that the buyer's legit. If we have an unsigned offer, the seller's gonna say we have nothing. So the buyer calls their agent, says this thing is signed, we're ready to go, let's present the offer. Buyer's agent contacts the listing agent and says, I got an offer for your seller. I'm going to send it now. These are the terms. This is what my buyer would like. What the heck? This is why my buyer likes this house so much. I hope you will consider and choose us, right? I'm trying to sell this offer to the agent. I want them to pick me. So I'm trying to sell this offer to the agent. The agent calls the seller and says, hey, we have an offer. When can we review the terms of the offer? As the offeree, the seller always has, or the offeree always has 3 choices whenever they receive an offer. They can accept it, they can reject it, or they can counter it. If they accept it, they agree to all of the terms exactly how they are. There is no but, or, however, with an acceptance. You agree to it all exactly how it is. If they reject it, they've killed the offer. It is dead on the table. Both parties go about their lives as if this offer never happened. If they counter it, the roles reverse. The seller, a counter offer is a rejection. The seller has rejected the buyer's offer, and now they are going to make a brand new offer to the buyer. The seller becomes the offeror, the buyer becomes the offeree. Listing agent calls the selling agent, says, my guys have countered. Here's what they're countering. Buyer's agent calls the buyer, says, we have a counter. The buyer's now the offeree. The buyer has 3 choices. They can accept it, reject it, or counter. If they counter it, those roles reverse again. There is no, well, the only way to end a counter is with acceptance or rejection. So we keep going until we get to that. Do I have questions so far? We're getting there. We're just counting right now. We're negotiating. We're going back and forth, right? So now let's just say the ball's in the buyer's court, right? They're the receivee. They decide to accept. By accepting the offer, they have to sign it. There is no such thing as verbal acceptance. If you got verbal, you got nothing. So we have our acceptance. The next piece I need is communication of acceptance. The buyer calls their agent and says, I have signed it. When the buyer calls their agent, did that communication cross the line? No, we're still hanging out on this side of the line, aren't we? Communication of acceptance hasn't happened. Communication of acceptance must cross the contract formation line. So the buyer calls their agent. They said, we accept. The buyer's agent calls the listing agent and says, we've accepted. Has communication crossed the line? Congratulations, folks. We're under contract. As the listing agent, what's the very next thing you want to do? Don't you want to call your seller and tell them the good news? And this phone call isn't, are you sure you still want it? This phone call is, congratulations, we're under contract. Communicating acceptance to me, the agent, is just as good as communicating directly to my client. And once you tell me they've accepted, once we know that they've signed it, we're under contract. I call this the contract formation wall. I don't know. I need a better name for it. Whatever you want to call it. I don't care. Maybe I should do a contest one day to find a better name for this. But I think you guys should draw it out on your exams, because you're going to have a couple counters. And bottom line, what I need you guys to see is when the last offeree signs it, and when that communication crosses the line. Not when we're communicating on the same side, but when that communication crosses the line. I need you to see those 2 things. And the best way I know to do it is draw it out, give yourself a picture. I like pictures.
I have a question.
Please.
For test purposes, acceptance is going to mean sign.
Yes. In the real world, I need you to verify. But yes, acceptance for your exam means sign. The other thing I need you guys to pay attention to in that test question that forms a contract is the communication of acceptance. We only need communication to cross the line once. Everything else is a follow-up. So if the test question, for example, says that the buyer's agent called the listing agent and then they sent a text and then they sent an email, which form of communication put us under contract? You could show me a number. Which form of communication put us under contract? Yeah, number one. Number one is we have communicated acceptance. We are communicating the fact that it's been signed. A text is following up, and then the email, hopefully we're sending the actual document. Does that make sense? I just needed to cross the line once. Everything after that is a follow-up to make sure you got it. Yes, ma'am.
So in real world, because in the exam, just communication is that we're under control. But when they call us and we don't save the call, like if they all tell us like the communication is the offer is being accepted, and then we don't have the paper sign, what could happen with that, because we don't have proof that they accept the offer.
Remember, at this point, all we're doing is communicating acceptance. We're communicating the fact that it has been signed. It might be, Ezra, I'm the buyer's agent, you're the listing agent in this case, and I call you up and I say, and maybe you answer, or maybe I leave a voicemail, and I say, my guys have signed, you know, I'm out and about right now. I'm on my way back to the office, and as soon as I get back to the office, I will send you the signed contract. If I forget, I need you to call me tomorrow, and 2 hours from now and 4 hours. I need you to be like that annoying little gnat that doesn't go away, because there is nothing that you can do at this point until you get that signed contract. So, give me a minute to get back to my laptop and I'll email it to you. But we need to stay in touch because you do need a copy of that contract. But remember, you guys, I'm going to go back just for 1 second. I'm not communicating a signed offer. I'm communicating that it has been signed. I'm communicating acceptance. I will get you the signed offer just as soon as I can. And again, I mean, if that agent, I hate to say it, isn't cooperating, then we may just need to be that annoying little gnat until we get it. And if they're still not calling you back, go to their BIC, because we need, be reasonable, guys, but we need a signed copy of that contract before we can do much else. Contract formation. We must have acceptance by all parties. We must have communication of acceptance. Congratulations, we're under contract. Remind me what we document? Everything. And that does apply when we are forming a legally binding contract on behalf of other people, on behalf of our buyers or sellers. Document. You got a text message, you got a phone call, you got a voicemail, email, whatever. Document that conversation, document that.
At this point, is this when, once we have the signed contract, is this when we send all of this over to the lender and then the attorney?
Buyer's agents, yep.
Okay.
Yep. Buyer's agents. Now we're going to send that fully executed, fully signed contract to the buyer's lender. And then you're going to go to the attorney and schedule settlement and send them the contract. Anything else on this? Okay, so submitting offers to sellers. Remember, offers are revocable, which mean the offer or the giver of the offer is free to revoke their offer at any time prior to acceptance. So in Ezrali's case, where the seller wasn't responding, where we couldn't get them to get back to us, look, your buyer may reach a point where they're like, you know what? I'm done. Because doesn't that kind of foreshadow what the rest of the transaction might be like? So your buyer may decide, if this seller's not responsive now, how responsive are they going to be as we get closer to closing? That is your buyer's decision to revoke their offer. We just let them know that they have that option. So the offeror can revoke their offer at any time prior to acceptance, even if they put an expiration date on their offer. Even if they said my offer is good till 5 p.m. on Thursday, they can still revoke their offer tomorrow morning. The offeror is always free to revoke their offer at any time prior to acceptance. Then we got the offer. We're good. The offer must be accepted, and that acceptance must be communicated. The offeror must know that the offeree has signed their offer, has accepted their offer. Then and only then are we under contract. That magic moment in time. As far as communication, agents communicate. To Ezrali's point, we're trying to make this happen for buyers and sellers. You start dragging your feet, and look, I get it, right? Like, life happens. There's an old saying in this industry, and it's so very true. If you want to sell a house, go on vacation. The best way I know how to sell a house is plan a week at the beach, right? I swear it will never fail anytime. By the time you're pulling your suitcase out the closet, your phone is going to blow up. If you're working with buyers that are negotiating offers, if you have sellers where an offer may come in, have somebody in your firm help you out. Cover for me while I'm on vacation. You scratch your back, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You know, your broker in charge may be able to step in and help you with this. But don't let this, that's so funny. Now you know my secret. But that's so funny that that's it. We can't let our communication, our lack of communication, be the reason why. That's funny. Be the reason why offers aren't made, offers aren't accepted. I don't know about you guys. I mean, imagine a scenario. My buyer calls me, our previous example, my buyer calls me and says, we've accepted. And I say, great, awesome. But I don't have time right now to call the listing agent. I'll get to it when I can, but I'm really busy because I got some appointments today and da 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 da. And in the meantime, before I can communicate acceptance, another better offer comes swooping in. The seller, we're not under contract yet. And if I haven't communicated that acceptance because I'm too busy, the seller's going to accept the other offer. Now I got to make that phone call to my buyer. I would have a hard time going to sleep tonight knowing that I was the one that cost my buyer or seller this transaction because I didn't communicate effectively. If you're not available, if you can't be around, you're in the throes of negotiations. If you are, again, working with a seller, you know, with a listing, an offer can come in at any time, right? So if you know you need help, ask. Go to your BIC. Ezrali's on vacation right now. That's so funny. She's got somebody handling affairs for her, right? It's okay for us to go on vacation. I know sometimes a lot of real estate agents have a hard time with that, but it's okay to go on vacation. As I say, if the president of the United States of America can take a vacation, then so can the real estate agent. So go on vacation, just make sure you have it covered. Make sure that that communication doesn't fall off. And seriously, guys, I don't care how busy you are. When your buyer calls you and says, or your seller calls you and said, I've signed, how long does it take you to send a text to the agent that says, my guys have signed, I will get you signed offer later tonight? You don't even have to text it anymore. You can do talk to text, right? Just be safe, pull over, don't do it while you're driving. But seriously, how long does that take? Let's not be the reason why our buyers and sellers don't have this transaction. Comments on this? All right, submitting offers to sellers. We got a couple schools of thoughts on this, but they parallel, they're very similar. So the law of agency is one school of thought. The law of agency says that we have a duty, seller's agent has a duty to present all offers. Very good. We present all offers. And we have this duty to present all offers to the seller as soon as possible. The law of agency also says that we have to disclose at that time we're presenting the offer, we have to disclose any information to the seller that could affect their decision. Did you learn something about the buyer's motivation for buying, or any acceptable terms or price, any material facts, anything like that? Let the seller have all the information now so they can make that decision about whether to reject, accept, or counteroffer. Another school of thought, again, very similar, comes from the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. They say we have a duty to deliver all offers immediately, but in no event later than, does anybody remember how many days? You can show me if you remember. No event later than, look at you guys go, 3 days from the date of execution. So law of agency says as soon as possible. Real Estate Commission says immediately, but in no event later than 3 days. Pretty similar, right? When are we delivering offers to our sellers? As soon as we can. Why are we sitting on offers? I never understood that. Why are we sitting on offers? Now, if my seller says I don't get off work till 5, okay, I'm going to call them at 5:01, right? When is immediately? When is, and they're walking across the parking lot and I'm on the phone going, hey, we got an offer, right?
That's your money. Why would anybody do that?
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. Like, I don't get paid until it closes. It won't close
Exactly.
if it doesn't go under contract. It can't go under contract if I don't present the offer. I've never understood why agents sit on offers. I don't. I'm hoping one day to get a really good answer, but so far I haven't. So when we submit these offers, at that time, we may know of other offers coming in. Maybe you had a showing this afternoon and the showing feedback says buyers love it, offer coming soon, right? I need to let the seller know that there might be another offer coming in. Again, understanding that in your hand and on its way are two totally different things. All I know is they said they were going to submit an offer. Do we have to wait to respond to the offer that we have in our hand until the other offer comes in? Do we have to wait for the other offer? No. If the seller wants to accept the offer that we have in our hand, then we can accept it. I appreciate that you showed it this afternoon and your buyers really liked it, but we don't have to wait for you. Now, if the offer we have in our hand isn't great, then maybe we do wait on that other offer so we can kind of see where we're at, right? But the seller doesn't have to wait. They are free to accept any offer at any time. Any questions or concerns about our commission? All points of agency agreement, including commission, need to be worked out before we present the offer. Before we present the offer on behalf of our buyer, or we present the offer to our seller. And again, our commission doesn't belong in the offer to purchase and contract. That needs to go in the agency agreement. It's reduced to writing and all points have already been negotiated. And then I think we're good on this. I don't have the authority to accept or reject an offer. I can only speak on my client's behalf. Questions on submitting offers to sellers? Yeah,
So I know that you say that we had to have a proof of income of our client before we do the agreement or send an offer. So,
should.
yeah, so sometimes customer call you and they say they are looking for this one specific, and they say, oh, we can put an offer or whatever, and you say to them that they need to send you that they got already the money. So there is some people that sometimes it's more easy that they give you a screenshot that they have the money, or we need to do what you told of, like the asking about the statement of the bank. Because I have a one client that they have the money, but it wasn't available until a specific date, because it was a check, personal check, and it wasn't available cash yet.
Right,
So like, I don't know what we can do with that, because the check it can be rejected from the
exactly.
bank.
Exactly. Here's the deal, Eswell. There's no law or rule that says that we have to present an offer with pre-approval or proof of funds. However, as a listing agent, I'm going to advise my seller not to respond to this offer until we can verify that they can afford to buy the house. I think that's the best way to protect my seller. So you have a stronger offer. Now, because the check is pending, you might be able to get the bank to send you a letter that says as such, right? That it's coming. Like you said, it could still be rejected. It's not a done deal. But seriously, as a listing agent, I'd be like, yeah, we got an offer, but we didn't get a proof of funds. So they say they have the money, but I don't have that proof. I would caution them against accepting this offer until we see that they have it. Because anybody could call you and say, hey, I'm getting $100,000 from, my long lost uncle, but if they can't prove it, how do I expect the seller to take that seriously?
But I have a question then, and on that aspect of it. Don't you want to find out if the person qualifies before you're taking them out to even see a
Exactly,
specific,
Cheryl.
I
And
mean,
that's the
are you
second.
wasting your time?
So back up, Ezra, before you're presenting the offer, we want to see, because why are we wasting our time? Yeah, I can get you pre-approval. Okay, where is it? Yeah, I can get you proof of funds. Where is it? So back up. This, to Cheryl's point, should be taken care of before we're presenting the offer.
I mean, because otherwise you're driving all around town showing them homes they can't.
You're
Or-
wasting both your time, right? Yours
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
wear and tear on your gas, on your car, I should say. That's gas, wear and tear on your tires, right? I mean, all that adds up. And then you go to present the offer and they're like, I don't have proof of funds. We're both feeling a little. So yeah, by the time we're presenting the offer, that should already be a done deal, pre-approval or proof of funds. But there have been times as a listing agent where I get an offer without proof of funds. And I'm not going to advise my seller to accept it. As buyer's agent, I'm not presenting it without it, because I know a seller's not going to take it seriously until we can prove, right? Until they can prove. Anything else? Questions, comments, thoughts on life? Yeah.
Miss Julie, can you send to us the link of YouTube? Because I was looking for the class that we did before, and it appeared just the first class that we had to take for the license. But this one, I don't know how to find it in YouTube, in your channel, because I need to
Yep.
see the CD again, because I need to practice
So
that.
let me put the link in the chat for you guys again, so you can grab that. So pull your chats up. And there is our YouTube channel link. So you can click on it and either subscribe to it so you can find it, or you can bookmark it so you can get back to it. Tomorrow, CD number 4 from the online learning system, finish 11. Forms, I got some more forms to do tomorrow. License status, education issues if we get to it. If not, it won't take us but a few minutes on Thursday. And then we're going to talk about what to expect on Thursday for the exam, rules and expectations. And then Thursday we'll do a review, we'll take a test, and we'll put 302 behind us. So close.
And the exam is 3 hours.
Yes. Yep. So I got to start by 6:30. So we got a couple hours to review, answer any questions, that kind of thing. We just got to start by 6:30, which we're doing great on time. So I'm not too worried about that. And with the exam, when you're done, you're done. So if it only takes you 2 hours, and you get out a little early on Thursday. So there's that. But don't rush to get out and not do well. Take as much of that 3 hours as you need to. Okay. Y'all have a good night. Sleep fast if you have to work in the morning. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Good
Thank you,
night.
guys. Have a good evening.